الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. I ask Allah to give us Iman and Tawfiq, and ask Allah that He facilitates for us our affairs, and that He doesn't leave us even for a blinking of an eye, that He allows us to get closer to Him, and that He gives us Hidayah and Tawfiq in every single situation that we find ourselves in. Ask Allah that He preserves us and our homes and our loved ones and the Muslim Ummah, and that He allows us to get closer to Him collectively so that we can become honoured and find a salvation for ourselves in this dunya, and more importantly return to Him with a beautiful returning in the Akhirah. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. My brothers and sisters, the masajid are still closed. The Prophet ﷺ has taught us that whenever you receive bad news, and if that bad news continues, also to make tarji'. And tarji' is to say inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. And when a person does that, bi'idhnillah, with the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will replace it with something better. أولئك عليهم صلوات من ربهم ورحمة وأولئك هم المهتدون. Upon them is the mercy of Allah and His praises upon them, and His forgiveness and His dua is accepted from them. أولئك عليهم صلوات من ربهم ورحمة وأولئك هم المهتدون. And they are the people who have been given hidayah, ilm and beneficial actions. So whenever you hear bad news, my brothers and sisters, accompany with that with the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Him teaching us what the tarji' is. The masajid are still closed. The situation around the world is getting worse. Wa inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. And perhaps Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with us being steadfast, will replace it with something better. Before we continue with the book itself, I wanted to discuss these things later on, but I think the issue is very, very pressing, and it will come again later on, but we'll discuss it in more detail right now, and then we'll cover it later on when it comes to its particular chapter. There are two very important issues which are facing the Muslim community around the world, but definitely in the UK at the moment, and one of them is praying salah in the masjid, specifically Salatul Jumu'ah. And the other issue that we are facing is what to do when a family member becomes sick, and may Allah protect us and our loved ones, what to do if a family member passes away. Because our religion is a communal religion, and we're going to look at Hajj as well, because this is the same thing, but we're going to look at that later on, inshallah, because we don't really need to talk about that right now. But our religion is a communal religion, and there are many parts of this religion which is obligated upon us that we have to do together. Islam is telling us to be united. Islam is telling us to work with one another based on Iman and Taqwa. Therefore, when it comes to a situation like this, we are now being told you cannot communicate and congregate in a normal manner. You have to have a distance from yourselves, and it isn't far-fetched to say that we are being forced to stay in our homes for our own betterment. Now, there are two very important principles in Islam. One is la darar wa la dirar. There cannot be no causing of harm, and there cannot be no facilitating of harm, according to one view from the ulama of usul and the fuqaha of this religion. Is that they've said that this principle means la darar wa la dirar, means that you cannot create harm and you cannot assist in causing harm. And others from the ulama have said la darar wa la dirar means that the person cannot be harmful himself and his actions cannot be harmful. Either way, the principle in the Sharia is teaching us something which is very important, which is that this religion is a religion of rahmah, of steadfastness, of engaging in us which is of the great good, and removing in us from that which is of the wider harm. Now, it doesn't capture completely on your screen here because of the font and the sizing. But this is a khutbah that was delivered by Sheikh Abdul Aziz al-Sheikh, the Grand Mufti of Saudi Arabia, Hafidhahullah, and he talks about this principle in great detail. Now, what I would typically do in this scenario is take something from the books of usul, or from the books of hadith, or books from tafsir perhaps, because this principle is enriched in the religion. You can find any book which is detailed, it will have this principle in there at some stage to explain that this is Islam. And there are times in Islam that something might be wajib, but then it's removed from you from being wajib. Why? Because there is a harm, a greater harm in you doing it, or to establish a lesser of the two evils. And there are plenty of examples. I mean, salat is an example. If you can't make sujda, what do you do? Does it say you have to make sujda if you're going to injure your leg? No, it says you replace it with something else. You find something which is lesser. Same thing with fasting. If you can't fast, are you still obliged to fast even if you're going to be harmed by fasting? Islam says no. If a person, and there are so many examples of it. And like I said, you will find this enriched in the books of fiqh and hadith and tafsir. However, the reason why I'm pointing at this khutbah here is because the Shaykh in the khutbah, as khutbahs are, is giving us a bit more of a spiritual backdrop behind it. And this is exactly what we need right now at this time. And he begins the khutbah, Hafidhahullah, by giving us the texts from the Quran and the Sunnah to establish this principle, because some of the ulama have said that the hadith is weak, but the correct opinion with the majority of the ulama have said that the hadith is hasan at its least. Is hasan at its least. But even if we were to say that the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said la darar wa la dirar, there can be no harm or causing of harm, there are plenty of other evidences which establish this principle for us. So the Prophet ﷺ says at the top of the screen here, as the Shaykh is saying, لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه. None of you will truly complete Iman until you love for your brother what you love for yourself. So part of completing your Iman is to establish in yourself to understand what is of a greater good for yourself, for your brother, for your Muslim community, and what is going to be harmful. وَالْمُسْلِمْ من سلم المسلمون من لسانه ويده والمؤمن من أمنه الناس على دمائهم وأموالهم. The Prophet ﷺ said in another hadith, the Muslim is somebody who the rest of the Muslims are safe from his tongue and from his hand. And what this means is obviously his tongue in a verbal sense and his hand in a physical sense. But there is no harm in this understanding here now, lisani, literally meaning that people are coughing and they are sneezing and they are spreading their germs, and that is causing other Muslims to be harmed. وَيَدِهِ, he is not washing his hands and he is spreading the germs. So if we look at the generality of what the Prophet ﷺ is saying in the wording here, it directly applies, even though that is not the inferred meaning by the ulama who have explained this hadith. وَالْمُؤْمِن, and the believer, مَنْ أَمِنَهُ النَّاسِ, this is all the people, not just the Muslims. All of mankind are safe from him, عَلَى دِمَائِهِمْ وَأَمْوَالِهِمْ, that they are safe from him. The mu'min is somebody who establishes peace and justice and stability and comfort, and he understands the greater good and removes the lesser of the two evils, and by that he preserves life and wealth of all of mankind. The Shaykh then goes on to bring a very important ayah, and this is mentioned in Surah Ahzab, ayah number 58, chapter number 33 of the Confederates. وَالَّذِينَ يُؤْذُونَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتِ, and those who harm the believers, male and female, بِغَيْرِ مَا اكْتَسَبُوا, without any just reason. There is no reason for that person to harm another Muslim. And as we have seen in the previous hadith, this can then extend to the rest of creation. Islam is not saying here that as long as you don't harm another mu'min, you can harm the trees, you can harm the plants, you can harm the kuffar. Nothing like that. وَالَّذِينَ يُؤْذُونَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتِ بِغَيْرِ مَا اكْتَسَبُوا فَقَدْ احْتَمَلُوا بُهْتَانًا وَإِثْمًا مُبِينًا, and they have attained for themselves a great buhtan and a great sin and a great chastisement. Buhtan is a slandering, wa ithman mubina, and a clear sin. And there are many different things, and now the Shaykh goes on to talk about it, and in the khutbah also he says, Mandar, whoever is harmful, dar Allah bih, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will cause him to be harmed as well. وَمَنْ شَاق, and whoever cause difficulty for other people, شَاق Allah bih, Allah will cause difficulty for him. And the Shaykh is explaining that in this hadith, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings about a very important principle, which is al-jaza' min jins al-amal. And that is an intrinsic principle within the maqasid and the field of the Sharia as a whole, which is that a person will attain for himself the recompense of the actions of the things that he has done. Just. So if a person has been making shirk with Allah, may Allah protect us, in the hellfire he'll be with those idols and he'll be asked to see if those idols can help him. It's just. You ask them in the dunya, ask him in the akhirah. It's the same thing. The Prophet ﷺ seen people on the day of in the night of Isra, that there will be people, in the night of Mi'raj, that will be people who are consuming riba, and he saw them being overly obese, so obese that they couldn't even move. Al-jaza' min jins al-amal, because the fact that they were so big, they wanted to attain a growing for themselves in the dunya of their wealth, a overpowering of other people financially in the dunya. So in the akhirah, they will be caused to be obese in that manner. Al-jaza' min jins al-amal. So the Shaykh is saying here, Hafidhahullah, those people who harm others, Allah will harm them, and those people who cause difficulty for others, Allah will cause difficulty for them. This is because Allah is not oppressive in the slightest to His servants. وَمَا رَبُّكَ بِظَلَّامٍ لِلْعَبِيدِ. What we have in the dunya is a consequence of our own actions. And I don't want to go on further because there are other things that we need to discuss in this, but there is a lot of khair in this khutbah, as you can probably see. It's very extensive. And the Shaykh's khutbah used to be very, very long. And here are the referencing at the bottom for the hadith, etc. The first hadith was from Bukhari and Muslim. The second hadith that we quoted was from Bukhari and Muslim also. And the third hadith was taken from Ahmad, Abu Dawud and Tirmidhi. And Tirmidhi himself said that the hadith is Hasan Gharib. And Shaykh al-Albani made the hadith Sahih or Hasan in Sahih Sunan Abu Dawud or Sunan Abi Dawud. So the point that we're making here is that it's a very important principle that Islam tells us to attain security and stability for mankind. And if we don't do that, we are uncaring for ourselves a great deal of sin. Now with that, we can now learn that with what's happening with janazah and burials and ghusl and salatul Jumu'ah and the congregational prayers, we have to see for ourselves whether Islam still wants us to continue worshipping Allah in that congregational manner, or is it of the lesser of the two evils and the greater of the harm if we were to continue, and the lesser of the two evils if we abstain? And does the Sharia gives us something as a replacement for? So that's the first principle. The first principle is that Islam tells us we are not allowed to harm other people. But there is another principle, and this is precisely where a lot of the people are at, in not understanding this principle here. And this is a very important principle which is taken from Usul al-Fiqhiyah, and this is the online version of the book, and it's in the 6th mujallad, in the 6th chapter, in the 6th volume, should I say, on page number 314. Intiqal al-wujub, or intiqal al-wajib. Al-intiqal al-wajib, which basically means if a person is not able to do something, then does it move on to something else as a replacement? This is basically a book which is an encyclopedia of fiqh, and in this book, as you will probably see later on, as you probably can see on the screen right now, there are statements from different ulama, from different madhahib, which talk about different rulings. And so it's basically a comparative fiqh encyclopedia. And there is no mas'ala, Obviously, completion is for Allah and His Messenger, but there is no masala that you can probably ever think of, except that it's been mentioned in this encyclopedia. It's more than 40 volumes long, and it has all of the most relevant opinions from the different fuqaha. So now they are saying, al-hukm al-taklifi قد يكون انتقال واجبا وقد يكون جائزا. And this is very important. If you are not able to do something, which is wajib upon you, now you have to look at the evidence. It could be that the thing that you are doing instead becomes wajib. And the example they're going to give now, we're going to give examples of that, but let's just explain the principle first. If there is something wajib and you're not able to do that thing which is wajib, then you might move on to something else which is wajib as a replacement. Or it could be that the thing is wajib, and because you cannot do it, it is no longer wajib anymore. And it becomes permissible if you can do it, but if you cannot establish it, then it is not wajib anymore. Or if you can do it, meaning in the sense that it was wajib, but it's no longer wajib anymore because some of the principles or some of the conditions or the pillars are missing, therefore it becomes of a level of permissibility, or permissibility because a certain group of people have established it because it's farz kifaya, and it is not wajib al-ain anymore. And we're going to look at examples of that. Intiqal al-wajib, so now moving of a wajib to another act of wajib, إذا تأذر الأصل, if the asl of the wujub, of the thing which is wajib, intiqal il-badal, then it moves on to something which is as a replacement. So now he gives an example here, which is that, and this is a well-known qaida in fiqh, and here are examples. من ذلك, for example, أنه إذا حلق المغصوب في يد الغاصب وجب مثله أو قيمته. If a person has stolen something from somebody, he must return that thing he has stolen. So if a person steals another person's phone, for example, he must return that phone that he has stolen. He can't give him the money instead. He can't buy a replacement phone. He has to return the exact thing that he has stolen. However, this becomes wajib. However, if he cannot return the thing which is wajib, the thing that he has stolen, which is wajib upon him, what does he do? This is known as intiqal al-wajib. So then he moves on to something which is similar as a replacement. Either he buys him a new phone or he gives him the money. And an example of that also is if a person is not able to do wudu with water, then he moves to making tayammum. Another example is given here now. Look at the third example now. وَمَنْ عَجَزَ عَنِ الْقِيَامِ فِي الصَّلَاةِ. And if a person is unable to stand in salah, انتقل إلى القعود, then he sits down and prays, because that becomes wajib for him now. وَمَنْ عَجَزَ عَنْ صِيَامِ لِشَيْخُوخَتِهِ. If a person is not able to make the siyam because he is old, it then becomes wajib upon him to do something else, which is a fidya. This is the point. وَمَنْ عَجَزَ عَنْ أَدَاءِ الصَّلَاةِ الْجُمْعَةِ. If a person is not able to establish the Jumu'ah prayers, لِمَرَضٍ أَوْ غَيْرٍ, because he is ill, or other than that, and we're going to talk about other than that in a minute, we can apply fear, we can apply being on lockdown, وَجَبَتْ عَلَيْهِ صَلَاةُ الظُّهْرِ, and then it becomes wajib upon him to pray Salatul Dhuhr. Now the problem with this now is people don't understand this principle, so they say, well, if I'm not able to perform what is wajib upon me, I'm still going to go out and do what I'm supposed to do, which is wajib, and I'm not going to pay attention to what the government and what the experts are saying, and that is haram. Why? Because of the first principle, la darar wa la dirar. And the evidences for that principle has preceded. But this principle here also, we have many examples in fiqh, and they are self-explanatory in the evidences in themselves. However, the Muslimun need to understand that if you cannot do something, then you need to look at the alternative. Islam always gives you an alternative because it's a perfect religion. It is not rigid. It can't be. And subhanAllah, look how people are thinking now. They are thinking, if I can't go for Salatul Jumu'ah, I need to find a mosque where I can go for Salatul Jumu'ah. But we say to you, Akhi, listen, stay at home and pray Salatul Dhuhr. They say, no, I want to go and pray Salatul Jumu'ah. What they are saying, whether it's explicit or not, is that Salatul Dhuhr is not important, Salatul Jumu'ah is important. As if Salatul Dhuhr is not one of the pillars of the religion. As if Salatul Dhuhr is not a wajib from the wujub of this religion. As if Salatul Dhuhr doesn't keep a person upon Islam and that he doesn't get rewarded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for it. No, the person wants Salatul Jumu'ah, even though the person is not fulfilled the criteria for praying Salatul Jumu'ah. And we're going to look at that later on in this lecture. So two very important principles here. Number one, if something is harmful, then the Muslim is not allowed to engage in that. If something is okay, but doing that action will cause a greater harm, then the Muslim is not allowed to do that. If the Muslim, and there are offshoots from this principle also. So there are other principles that come from nadar wala dirar, which is, for example, daf al-makarih يقدم على جلب المصالح, as the ulama have said. From darar wal-dirar, there is another principle, which is that removing harm takes precedence over spreading goodness. So if you've got two options, pray Salatul Jumu'ah or stay at home. But if you pray Salatul Jumu'ah, there is a chance that you could infect yourself or become a cause of other people being infected. Or do you stay at home and self-isolate? Which one do you give precedence to? The second principle, which is an offshoot of la darar wa la dirar, there should be no harm or reciprocating harm, which is that if there is an option of stopping something which is harmful and doing an action which may be even wajib upon you, then stopping what is harmful takes precedence. That's the first principle, and another principle connected to that. But the second principle that we looked at here is that if the wajib cannot be done, then we seek the alternative. Now, what is very important from this second principle is that if there is dalil for the alternative, then we do what is the alternative. If there is no dalil for the alternative, then the ulama have said that there is suqut. And there is another principle, and that suqut basically means that he doesn't need to do anything. And there's another principle which stems from this principle, which is إِذَا تَعَذَّرَ الْأَصْلُ وَجِبَ الْإِنْتِقَالِ لِلْبَدَلِ, which is the second principle, is that if a person is not able to do what is wajib upon him in origin, then he moves on to the second thing or another alternative which is wajib. Another principle of that principle, I'm sorry if this is very confusing, but if you write it down, it may hopefully make sense. The second principle of the second principle is that la wujub ma'al ajz. If a person is not able to do something at all, and there is no dalil for the badal, then there is no wujub at all. Right. If a person is not able to go to the masjid, and he is not able to pray Salatul Janazah, because the government are saying do not go and do not mix, and it is only for the immediate family, and do not go sit in their homes, and do not congregate, and do not give your condolences and by sitting in their homes. What do? You look at the badal in the Sharia. What's the badal? The badal, as in the alternative, here now, maybe you can WhatsApp them, maybe you can ring them or something to give your condolences. If there isn't that as an option either, let's say, then there is no wajib left for that person anymore. La wujub ma'al ajz. So this is very important because this also is surrounded with the dalil and the presence of dalil and the absence of dalil. So now, for example, a person will say, well, I want to go for Salatul Jumu'ah, or I want to go and bury my deceased, but I'm not able to do so. What's the alternative? I don't find an alternative. I don't have an alternative. In the Sharia, the alternatives don't apply to me. Then what do? We are saying to you, then you don't need to do anything else. But what is happening now is you find people, they are creating new acts of worship. They are creating innovative acts of worship, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, أَمْ لَهُمْ شُرَكَاء شَرَعُوا لَهُم مِّنَ الدِّينِ. Do they have partners who have legislated for them a new religion or ruling in the religion alongside Allah? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us very clear that we are not allowed to legislate religion for ourselves. That's about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the haqq of Allah, the right of Allah. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also gives it as a haqq to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which has been granted to him. وَمَا أَتَاكُمُ الرَّسُولُ فَخُذُوا. Whatever the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, messenger of Allah, has given to you, then take it. وَمَا نَهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ فَانْتَهُوا. Whatever he has told you to stay away from, then stay away from it. The Prophet ﷺ also said, "Man ahdatha fi amrina ma laysa min, fahuwa rad." Whoever innovates and introduces a new idea into the religion which has got no precedence for it, then it will be rejected. This hadith, the ulama are saying, this is a hadith in Sahih Bukhari on the authority of Aisha radiallahu anha, have said that the person who creates a new way of trying to get closer to Allah, he thinks, oh, let me think of a way of worshipping Allah. Let's do a du'a jama'i, a congregational du'a in different parts of the world, and we'll synchronize the time. Or let's go onto our rooftops. Or let's establish the salah in the masjid, so that the salah continues in the masjid even if it's a small number of people, so that the mosque is not completely abandoned. And we'll do that with Jumu'ah also. Has that been legislated in the religion, or has it not? Or there's another one that's come out also, is that you have the saf of the salah and people are standing 2 meters side by side. Is there any dalil for any of these things? The answer is no. Therefore, there is no badal, number one. And if there is no badal and there is no dalil for badal, then la wujub ma'al ajz. There is no wujub, there is no obligation, there is nothing mustahab, there is nothing wajib if the person is not able to physically do that thing. And this is very important, my brothers and sisters, because as you can see now, we are living in a time which is unprecedented and people are making up different ways of worshipping Allah. So now you have a saf and you've got people standing 1 meter, 2 meters away from one another, when the Prophet ﷺ has clearly told us in the Sunnah, there are one or two options. Number one, he used to say, "Staw sufufakum wa suddu al-faraj, inna taswiyat as-saf min tamam as-salah, as-safu awwala fil awwal." He used to say, bridge the gaps, get closer with one another, straighten the lines. Is there anything in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ where it says that if you are not able to stand next to one another, then you have a gap? Is there a dalil? Is there evidence for the alternative? The answer is no. Therefore, we move on to the second principle, which is la wujub ma'al ajz, which is that there is suqut. There is no ruling for you anymore, because there is no dalil. Therefore, the Prophet ﷺ has taught us how to make saf. If you can't make the saf, what's the ruling? Hadith of Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhuma, "Ala sallu fi rihalikum, sallu fi rihalikum." The Prophet ﷺ told him to make the mu'adhin to make the adhan, pray in your homes, because you can't come to the mosque and pray in the way that is supposed to be prayed. So if you can't come to the mosque, the badal and the alternative is that ta'adhan al-asl. The asl is that you come to the mosque. Intiqal ila al-badal, then you move on to the alternative, which is you make the hayya al-atayn, the hayya al-salah, hayya al-falan, you change them into sallu fi rihalikum, sallu fi rihalikum. And if you can't stand in the way that you're supposed to stand in salah, then there is no wujub ma'al ajz, and there is nothing obligatory upon you if you are not able to do the action as prescribed in Islam, and there is no alternative, then you cannot innovate. And this is very important. These principles that we have discussed today are so important so that we can understand the religion for what it actually is. And with that, we can also then apply to janazah. And we're going to now look at how this all applies to our situation here. So now let's see, for example, what do we have here? Leaving Salatul Jumu'ah and Jama'ah, the congregational prayer and the Jumu'ah. أثر الظلم في ترك الجمعة والجماعة. Now the author in Mosul Fiqhiyya, and this is chapter number 29, is talking about a person who is not able to go out because of an oppression that is happening here. But what he means by oppression also is fear. So if you are trying to go out for the congregational prayers or the Jummah prayers, but there is a genuine fear, and the doctors are saying there is a fear, and the government is telling you that, the whole world is telling you there's a fear, the Haram in Makkah is telling you that there's a fear, ذهب الفقهاء, and there is no difference of opinion here, the fuqaha, إلى اعتبار الخوف من الظالم عذرا من أعذار مبيح لترك صلاة الجمعة والجماعة. That is the proof for you to leave Salatul Jumu'ah and Jama'ah, and you pray at home. لأن الأمن, this is because security and being in a state of comfort and ease, شرط فيهما. There is no difference of opinion on this, that this is a condition for you to be able to do it with comfort and ease, is a condition for you to then establish that act of worship. This is taken from Sahih Muslim by Imam al-Nawawi, And it says here, هذا وقد اجتمعت الأمة أن الجمعة لا, that the Ummah is agreed that Salat al-Jumu'ah is not established. If it is not established, then ولكن من فاتته لزمه الظهر. And if it is not established and he has missed it in the way that it should have been prayed, then he prays Salat al-Dhuhr, and there is no difference of opinion on that. So now what we've established with these principles is that Islam is telling us that if you are not able to go out, then this becomes a contradiction to one of the pillars of Salatul Jumu'ah. And as the author is saying here, this is not Imam al-Nawawi, Fathul Munir is not by Imam al-Nawawi, but the point here we're making here, and this is, you'll find this in Nawawi actually, Nawawi's Sharh Sahih Muslim, is that if a person is not able to pray Salatul Jumu'ah, then he prays Salatul Dhuhr instead. And we will find also, there was a link there to a Hanafi book, but I've accidentally closed it. But I mean, I think the point has been made here. But this is a well-known incident that happened in the history of the Caliphate of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu. And this is the understanding that has been given by our ulama, Sheikh Salih Shithri specifically, and the link is here at the bottom that you can find on YouTube, which is that when Umar radiallahu anhu was faced with a huge plague in Sham, and it killed up to 20,000 to 30,000 Muslims, and it affected millions of people worldwide because it started from Europe and it travelled across the globe, Amr ibn As suggested that the Muslims go into the mountains. Amr ibn As was made responsible because the companions were passing away. Mu'adh had just passed away. Amr takes over, should I say. And he says, let's go and move to the valleys and the mountains so we can stay away from the infected areas. And as we will see in today's book, inshallah, the author actually mentions, and he quotes Ibn Qayyim and others, that one of the ways that you can prevent yourself from becoming infected is removing yourself from contagious air. Because some of these plagues and infections are airborne, and the Sharia actually tells us that if you feel that this is one of the things that the experts are telling you, because Allah tells us, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ, ask the people of dhikr if you don't know, then in that scenario, if they have told you to do that, then move. So this understanding has also been taken from the religion. Amr ibn As said, let's move from the urban areas to the valleys and the mountains. As a result, the masajid were closed. There was no Jumu'ah or Jama'ah. And Umar ibn Khattab didn't approve of it. In actual fact, he approved of it. And this then actually became one of the sunan of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anh, as an action to do during a pandemic. This is taken now from Imam al-Qurtubi's tafsir from the last ayat from Surah al-Jumu'ah. And in this particular ayah, which is the last one, وَإِذَا رَأَوْا تِجَارَةً أَوْ لَهْوًا انفَضُّوا إِلَيْهَا وَتَرَكُوكَ قَائِمًا. This is the bit here. وَتَرَكُوكَ قَائِمًا is very important, because in the tafsir of this now, rahimahullah, he goes on, and there's so many masail, as you can see, probably it's just been cut off there, but he's saying that there are sab'a ashar mas'ala, that there are 17 different masail connected to this one ayah in fiqh, and from that he mentions الثاني واختلف العلماء في العدد, and this is the point that we're making here. The ulama have differed as to the minimum number that is needed to perform Salat al-Jumu'ah. Abu Yusuf and Layth and others have said aqid bi-thalatha, that the minimum is 3, and Sufyan al-Thawri and Abu Hanifa himself said 4, and others from the ulama have said 12, and others from the ulama have said 40. What seems to be the case is that there is no minimum as long as there is a khatib and there are people that are there to establish the prayer. But the point that we're making here from this is that if a person is in a state of fear, then those numbers should not be going out in the first place based on what we have said are the principles that we've already established. And what we also understand from this, and what we've also seen, is a person then saying, let's have a virtual khutbah, and let's have many different virtual khutbahs so that people can benefit. The author of this tafsir, rahimahullah, is saying here, وَتَرَكُوهَ قَائِمًا شَرْطٌ فِي قِيَامِ الْخَطِيبِ, that it is a condition for the khutbah to be valid is that the khatib is standing على المنبر إذا خطب, that he is standing on the minbar whilst he is speaking. Therefore, there is no such thing as having a virtual khutbah. And these are just some of the things that, that we can derive from these principles. لا ضرر ولا ضرار. And if there is no, if you're not able to do what is wajib, do you move on to the second alternative? Is there a second alternative? If there isn't one, what do you do? But just trying to complete what we are saying here about Salatul Jumu'ah, because this is probably the most important thing that is facing the Muslim right now, which is that the ulama have said that there are certain conditions and principles which are needed in order for Salatul Jumu'ah to be valid. And from those principles, the ulama, from those pillars, should I say, or conditions, from the conditions of Salatul Jumu'ah, from the shurut of Salatul Jumu'ah, that the ulama have not really disagreed on, is that the person must be a Muslim, he must be baligh, he must be an adult, he must be aqil, he must have his sanity. Number 4, he must be able. Number 5, it must be the time for salah. If you pray Salatul Jumu'ah after sunrise, then with the majority of the ulama that is not Jumu'ah, even though the Hanabila have said that it is. The Shafi'is, rahimahumullah, have said that Salatul Jum'ah must be established in a masjid. And from that now, we can understand with these principles and the pillars that we have just mentioned, is there such a thing of having Salatul Jum'ah in your home with 2 people or 3 people? The author of the tafsir here is saying here the minimum that you need is 4. And with some of the ulama, they are saying that it must be established in the masjid. من شرط أدائها المسجد المسخف من شروط أدائها المسجد المسخف. It must be a masjid that is a masjid which is established, and it has the adhan and the salat established in it. Now, the ulama have mentioned, if there is a need for us to have multiple Jumu'at, then that is fine. But if there is no need to have multiple Jumu'ahs, then it is not allowed. So from this we learn, from the pillars of Salatul Jumu'ah, is that it must be done in the masjid. And if they are not able to do it in the masjid, and there is a valid reason for them not doing it in the masjid, such as being at work or being far away from the masjid, then they will establish it in the place that they are. However, if I'm doing Salatul Jumu'ah here, my neighbour is doing Salatul Jumu'ah, and the person next door is doing, that is not a valid reason with the fuqaha. Because the place, it has to be in a mosque, it has to be in a masjid, it has to have the minimum number, and also from the ulama, they have mentioned that the person must be free and that the person must be safe. They've said that aman, the person must be safe. They said aman, and being in a state of security and ease, is from the shurut of Salatul Jumu'ah. And if a person is not able to have his fear removed, as we've just seen in Mosul Fiqh just a moment ago, then there is no such thing as Salat al-Jumu'ah. Then they are all agreed that the person must pray Salat al-Dhuhr, as we have seen from the explanation from Sahih Muslim, and there is no difference of opinion on that. So hopefully, this has been going on for about 35-40 minutes now, we've been explaining. Hopefully this now, I've been trying my best to think of all different avenues and all different eventualities and different ideas that people may have. Let's have a virtual khutbah, let's go out anyway and let's have a khutbah in our homes. Let's go to the masjid and keep it closed for the people, but we will establish our own Jumu'ah. All of these things need evidence, and all of these things need investigation. And what we have established so far are very important principles. But before we carry on with the book, there's one last thing about Salatul Janazah. Salatul Janazah, again here we have something about Salatul Janazah, and the ulama have mentioned here that Salatul Janazah is Fard al-Kifaya. So washing the deceased, burying the deceased and praying Salah over the deceased is a communal Fard, which basically means if one person does it, then it is sufficient, and that has been established. So as you can see here, ذهب جمهور الفقهاء إلى أن الصلاة على الجنازة فرض على الكفاية. That they have said that Salatul Janazah is fard upon one person. If one person is able to establish that, then that is sufficient. Now you might think, okay, well, Salah by one person, that's okay, but how is he supposed to wash and bury the person by himself? Well, the government are saying so far, and we have to pay attention to this, my brothers, because a lot of people are worried about cremating and things like that. And that kind of stuff is only going to come about if we carry on being stubborn. If we don't listen to the government, they won't listen to us. And they have every reason for them not to listen to us. And then we'll start kicking and screaming and saying that, we're not listening, we're being oppressed. If the government are saying stay at home, then stay at home. If the government are seeing you still establishing the salawat in the mosque, and you're not listening to what the ruler is saying, what the president, prime minister of the country is saying, then that's going to be problematic. If you are complying, then that is not only are you following the religion of Allah, but you're also showing them the good side of Islam. Now the government are saying this far is that if you are a immediate family member, you can wash by keeping your distance with the other person that's helping you wash, and you can establish the salah amongst yourselves, and that is enough. And that's sufficient. Islamically, that is sufficient, and that's what they're helping us recognize also Islamically. So it's very important for us to understand now that Salatul Janazah, you don't need to have hundreds and thousands of people come to the Janazah. You don't need to go to the home to give the person condolences. You do not need to move from your house unless if it is an immediate family member. And even then, the government are willing to make exceptions for you. Why? Because the majority of the fuqaha ila anna Salatul Janazah fardun ala kifaya, and that the Salatul Janazah is fard upon one person out of the community. من السنة أن لا يصلي رجل بالتيمم إلا صلاة واحدة. Okay, that's a different issue. So now the point that we're making here is the principles in the religion have given us a lot of flexibility, it's given us a lot of ease, it's given us a lot of comfort, and it gives us a good understanding from the religion. But before we move on to the book for today, and we're going to just do a little bit from the book, because we've been talking at length about a different issue, which is that it's a very important principle. And this is found in the books of the fuqaha, and there is no difference of opinion on this also. And this is found in the books of usul also, which is that you must take your knowledge from correct sources. You must take knowledge from the people who are presenting the knowledge to you with the understanding of the ulama. And that knowledge is not taken from websites. Knowledge is not taken from chat rooms. They are not taken from media outlets, they are not taken from social media outlets, and they are not taken from messaging groups, and they are not taken from videos that people are broadcasting, because now we can't even believe what we see. Even if you see a video, it might not be true. Islam is telling us to learn your religion. Islam is telling us to be wise. Islam is telling us not to be hasty. And the ulama have also mentioned, and again there is no difference of opinion on this, from the four madhahib, that you are not allowed to read the books of those madhabs unless you know what you are reading. And this applies to websites as well. So you might come across a trustworthy question and answer website, but if you do not know what you're reading, then you will not be able to apply it correctly. And if you're not going to read it correctly and apply it correctly, then you're going to have a misunderstanding of it. Therefore, what is the outlet? What is the outcome? What is the solution? What does Allah say in the Quran? فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. If you do not know, Allah doesn't say go to the website, go to the book, go to your bookshelf, go to your madhab, go to your mobile phone. Allah says ask the people of knowledge. Go to the ulama and the tullab al-ilm, and they will be able to find the right answer for you. And if you don't do that, my brothers and sisters, and this is exactly what we're seeing, and we have seen in history also, people will deviate and people will innovate. And as Ibn Hajar rahimahullah will point out, people created communal acts of worship which were innovated in order for them to remove the plague that they were in. And they created innovated du'as, and they created innovated acts of worship, innovated congregational prayers, innovated siyam, innovated i'tikaf, innovated different acts of worship. All of that proved to be pointless. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us through the tongue of His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, anybody who innovates into this religion, it will be rejected. Now in the last lesson, going